Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 106 of 2024. I'm your host, Kiev. You can find me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follows at the Oddsbreakers. Follows on social media / the Oddsbreakers. This episode is being brought to you by MyBookie.ag. For an up to $1,000 sign-up bonus, please visit this podcast description. Terms, conditions, and location apply. If you like support the Oddsbreakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member. Pick any of our winning cappers to get our premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. And if nothing else, please visit the Oddsbreakers, become a free Picks and Telegram subscriber. And just to remind you all, our monthly subscriptions are guaranteed or your money back. Nobody else does that. They just give you more picks. We are completely guaranteed at the Oddsbreakers for our monthly subscriptions that say guaranteed next to them, which is pretty much everyone's, minus a couple cappers. But that we put our money where our mouth is. We don't make money for you. We don't make money. That's just the bottom line here at the Oddsbreakers. Check us out on our premium plays. So lots to talk about here. College football bowls, part 2. We're going to go December 20th through the 24th. This is the episode before our Christmas episode. Hoping to have that Christmas episode up and running next week. Monday or Tuesday, most likely. And then that's going to cover the rest of the bowls up to January 1st, the college football second round of the playoffs. And then we'll have another one kind of touching on some of those later bowls later in the month. We're probably going to be doing 2 podcasts a week all the way up through New Year's. So going to be trying to put NFL on the later one, but there's only going to be one more week of fantasy football, and that should come out on Tuesday next week as well. It might be combined with our Christmas show. I just don't know yet, but we're going to keep talking college and NFL bowls throughout the whole thing. We're covering every single bowl game, motivation, home field advantage, its current spreads, current people sitting out, transfers, NFL draft, opt-outs, all kinds of that stuff that we pull our hair out about every single day. But here at the Oddsbreakers, we're going to do our best to try to help you out. And we have a wonderful guest for you today. Mr. Paul Stone from Paul Stone Sports in VSiN is back to break down some bowls. So I'm really excited to talk to Paul about his thoughts of the college bowl system and obviously the playoff seeding and the actual games itself. So Paul's going to help us break those games down. And then I'm going to do some NFL at the very end for week 16. So we have a lot to talk about today. So let's get right into college football bowls with Paul Stone Sports. Now I'm very excited to welcome back Mr. Paul Stone from Paul Stone Sports in VSiN. You can follow Paul on Twitter or X at Paul Stone Sports. Paul, man, deadlocked here. Bowl season's upon us. How the heck you doing out in Texas?
Doing well. I tell you, it's a busy time of year. You know, we were talking, both of us being not only college football handicappers, but we handicap other sports. And I've handicapped college basketball from the beginning of the season, which was the first Friday in November, until the end in early April. So we have this overlap right now. And as professional handicappers for guys like you and myself, it's always busy, but it's even busier right now. This kind of my busiest time of the year, but it's a great time of the year too, and blessed to be able to do what we do.
Absolutely. It's so fun and fun to watch. And yes, we do get up early in the morning. We discussed we're early rising gentlemen, so we like to get up and get after these lines nice and early. And that's a good thing. It gives you options as things move in your direction. So I love that, man. But this one, we'll talk. I cannot wait to talk more about college basketball, and hopefully we can get you back for that. But right now it's all about college football and the bowls and everything going on. And I follow you on Twitter, and I love some of the stuff you be putting out there. But let's kind of start with the basics here. What about the seeding? Do you have any issues with the committee and who they brought in for the playoffs and how they are seeded?
You know, it was a razor-thin call on the Alabama or SMU to take the final spot in the field. And, you know, everybody bashes the committee, and it's a tough job. I can certainly take my shots at them because I take some exception to some of their decisions and their process, but it is a difficult job. And I think we all knew coming in our heart of hearts that it was going to be difficult no matter how it turned out and no matter what decisions they were left with. It's a tough call, but I would have taken Alabama over SMU personally. It was razor thin. I'm a Texas guy, so I love SMU. If I'd have had more ammunition in the pockets, I would have maybe gone to SMU, but it's an expensive private school. So, and they maybe would have looked at my transcript. So that could have hurt my effort there as well. But certainly I have an affinity for SMU, but I would have probably taken Alabama just based on, strength of schedule. But I think really and truly, I think the committee recognizes, they would never admit it, but there wasn't a whole lot of an SEC presence on there. It seemed like it was more Big Ten backgrounds, for whatever that's worth. And secondly, I think people have SEC fatigue. I think many people think the SEC is overrated and that they've had their fair share, so let's give somebody else a shot. But I will say this, if SMU, in my mind anyway, you never know what their conversations were in the committee ballroom there in Grapevine, Texas, but SMU falls behind by 17 points. I think they were trailing still by 17 at the half. If they don't rally and tie that game at 31 and get beat on that final play, 56-yard field goal, just get beat by 3 points. If they don't show that fight, if they don't come back and they get beat by 10 or double digits, I think Alabama's in. I think the committee, from their standpoint, they're always looking for, again, they might not articulate this, but how could we explain it? How can we explain our decisions? And I think you can say, hey, SMU got beat by BYU at home early, and they had their chance against a Clemson team that wasn't all that super, and they, got beat by double digits. So Alabama, gets the spot. So had a little bit of exception with that. And then probably my bigger exception was Boise State's seeding. I think they got a lot of mileage, and deservedly so, from their 3-point loss in week 2 at Austin Stadium to Oregon, a game they could have won for sure. And Oregon's the best team in the country. They're number 1. They're the top seed. I believe they deserve that. But, the week before, Boise lost by 3 points to Oregon. FCS Idaho played Oregon in their season opener, and Oregon led Idaho 17-14 late in the game. Only won that game 24-14. So the rendition of the Ducks we're seeing today, I think they've come a long way. And by the way, that Idaho team, their season was ended in the FCS quarterfinals last weekend, but Montana State 52, Idaho 19.
Montana State. I got a buddy that went to Montana State, and he wants to watch the game with me on the 21st. And I'm like, hell yeah, I want to watch the game. You throw me a college football game, you want to watch it, I'm going to watch it with you, my friend. So at FCS, it don't matter. I'm excited.
And I don't mean to interrupt, but I probably should have carried that just a little bit further. Boise being seated as high as they are and getting the bye over not only, first of all, Arizona State, and even Clemson, but they look at that, they look at that one in Boise State's right side of their ledger, then they look at the 2 in Arizona State. So I think they're weighing way too much the record, which records are important, but strength of schedule is not given enough weight, in my opinion. I always like to say to people, it's not always how you play, it's who you play. And, like I equate it to our neighborhoods when we're growing up. If I stayed in my little neighborhood and, got in a wrestling match or a boxing match with little Johnny and Timmy and all these other boys, I could probably slap them around a little bit. But if I crossed the tracks and went into another conference, I might not be so tough. So, these schedules are disparate and the strengths of schedules range wildly. So, but I thought they did a pretty good job. It's a tough job.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's funny. Strength schedule is kind of in the eye of the beholder. What if we're all wrong and all our power ratings are wrong on the SEC? There's all kinds of things to say. The truth is, I have Alabama as a top 10 team. I mean, if you went by power ratings, they never go by power ratings. But I think parameters would be nice to say, maybe you had a rule that says no 3 losses for the conference, and then Alabama would have been out in that standpoint, because you can't make it an SEC invitational at the same time. to be like, oh, I'm sorry if your ceiling's so high and you can beat any of these teams in here, but your floor is so low because you lost 3 points to Oklahoma. And that's kind of, you got to weigh that a little bit. It's hard to bet Alabama in a way. It's almost like, as a sports bettor, I've been fortunate to fade them when they lost some of those games, but Vanderbilt in particular. But, it's kind of like Milroe is good enough to beat any of these teams, and yet they have the floor that's so bad that, if they play defense correctly against him and he's having a bad game, and they can look pretty average. And I think that the committee thought about that. And what's so funny about SMU, I wanted SMU in. They had a lot of work to get back into that game, and I think you are right that if they would have had that 17-point loss or 14 points or 10 plus, they probably would have not been in. But that also would have contradicted a lot of things that the committee said in the past, saying that if you make it to the conference championship, we're not going to punish you. And then all of a sudden, during the interview, the guy's like, well, we're going to look at it. Kind of telling you a little bit that Bama certainly had a path in. But I think the ACC definitely played their hand right in the way that worked out for the ACC, and the fact that Florida State got held out last year and then had to play Georgia on a skeleton crew of nobodies in their bowl game was just a kick in the pants, my man. Almost feel bad. I felt really bad for the ACC last year, so it's kind of like this is their revenge. But of course, the SEC is the one that's getting hurt right now, because if Indiana or even Penn State played that schedule that Alabama did, I could see 3-4 losses for sure, on their resumes as well. But, that's what you get when you get to have a super conference. It's like, if you're going to have a super conference, you can't expect to get everybody in. This is the college football playoffs. At least we got 3 very good representatives from the SEC. My biggest problem is Ohio State in Oregon's side of the bracket, Paul. I think that anybody that knows college football knows that Ohio State's a top 3 team, top 4 team, whatever you want to say. That should not be punishing Oregon right there. They should have flipped Penn State and Oregon's position right there, especially kind of how rough Georgia finished, and then Georgia had the quarterback issue, and then now you give them that side of the bracket. It makes no sense. I think they did favor the SEC by putting Texas on one side and putting Georgia on the other, Paul.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Oregon, to be the top seed, they sure did get a funny draw there. And I think clearly with some of the conversations you see from some of the big media types at ESPN and other places, even guys like you and I think the committee is certainly going to revisit the bracket, the way these things are seeded. I mean, Texas has Texas got, as some people have said, the coveted 5 seed. They're in. They really have. They have to play an extra game, obviously, but they have an easier road than Oregon. I mean, they get Arizona State if they if they beat Clemson, which is not a given. But Texas gets Arizona State at a neutral site, which Arizona State's not going to come in there and lay down, and they will be well rested, but they don't have to play Ohio State or anybody like that you would expect they might have to. So, yeah, they need to clean that bracket up and make the seedings better reflect the body of work that the teams enter the tournament with. And Oregon being undefeated in the top seed, they shouldn't be in the leg of the bracket that they are.
What's funny? Is it a neutral site in Alabama or in Georgia at the Mercedes-Benz at the Peach Bowl? I think you're going to get more Texas fans there than you're going to get ASU fans. I think I'm going to give Texas, if Texas obviously takes care of Clemson, which I expect, I'm going to give Texas probably at least 1 or 2 points of home field advantage in that situation. But I will tell you that it does suck for ASU that they lost their number 1 receiver like that, and they really got through that whole mess. And that kind of leads into my next question. I am actually happy the committee did give them the bye. They deserve that over SMU and Clemson. I'm very happy they did that. But do you have any issue with the awards being given out? I saw a few tweets of yours that you made some pretty good cases.
Well, the awards, Travis Hunter being the Heisman Trophy, I could see, I know a lot of people, I think a lot of people that are, and this is just speculation and theory on my part, but I think a lot of people that are disappointed with the Travis Hunter selection as the Heisman Trophy winner, which there are quite a few people disappointed with it. They would have rather seen Ashton Jeanty, who's a Texan. So I like guys from Texas. He's from the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but I have no qualms with it. But I think a lot of people that do, I think they have, I think Deion's kind of burned some bridges. I think he's rubbed some people the wrong way. I think some of his players, maybe, they reflect the coach. And I think they're maybe viewed as kind of the bad guys a little bit. So I think that's a little bit of it. And that's just, again, a theory and just speculation. Ashton Jeanty, I used to be a sports writer, and I never had a vote in the Heisman Trophy, but a lot of guys I worked with and knew less about college football than I did have a vote. And still have a vote in many cases. And some of these guys, and you've probably heard as much said, some of these guys that still have votes hadn't covered college football in years, but they're just on the roster and they get to vote every year. And some of them, they watch, their granddaughter's recitals more than they watch college football games. And it's really at that point, they need to clean up. They need to lessen the number of people. I know they want a broad representation of all regions of the country and a lot of people voting, to be sure it's not skewed to one candidate or another, but they need to clean the voting rolls up. But I think what hurt Ashton Jeanty in final summation, this is just my gut feelings, the fact he played the Mountain West Conference. Yeah. He had a big game against Oregon without question, but I think the level of competition got him a little bit, averaged less than 4 yards a carry in the first meeting against UNLV. I mean, I think he had to basically bat 1,000 probably to overcome Travis Hunter. And Travis Hunter is such a unique candidate. The fact that he excels on both sides of the ball. I mean, he's a tremendous player. And to have that kind of, even for a guy who plays a skill position, obviously the guys, the defensive tackles and the offensive linemen, not going to play every play. But most guys, they've got to get rest. They've got to get a blow when they just play one side of the ball. And this guy's playing every darn play, basically. And it's just incredible. I think people who've never played, maybe never played or not that familiar with the game, normal people don't have that kind of stamina. And not just stamina to be out there standing. You're talking about stamina to play every play at the highest level. I mean, he rarely played at anything less than a high level. So I don't have a problem with that. The one that and this is a lesser award, but the Burlsworth Award, Brandon Burlsworth was a offensive lineman at University of Arkansas maybe 20 years ago. There was a walk-on. He wore black rim glasses. I don't know if you remember him, but he died in a car accident. So the Burlsworth Award, he was originally a walk-on at the University of Arkansas. So this goes to the top former walk-on. And I'm saying this just from the perspective of I haven't seen him play a lot, but Michael Taft at Texas was one of the nominees. The linebacker from Oregon got that award. But Michael Taft, not only his play on the field, he's just an incredible story. Obviously a former walk-on to be one of the finalists for this award, but just a big-time hitter, a guy who doesn't seem to have the tools. He just looks like a little boy next door, and just a tremendous player at Texas and part of what I think is the nation's top defense. And just to be sure that I put this out here, Michael Taft for Texas will be he went to Austin Westlake High School on the west edge of Austin, and he'll be going up against one of his best friends and a co-member of the 2020 state champion Austin Westlake Chaparrals, the quarterback for Clemson, Cade Klubnik.
Oh.
So he's going to be trying to lay the wood on Cade Klubnik, and they're very close friends and became closer. They won the state championship in 2020, and they beat South Lake Carroll. Their quarterback's a guy named Quinn Ewers. So that was Ewers was one quarterback. Klubnik was the other, and Taft played with Klubnik there at Austin Westlake. But he'll be they blitz him a lot, so and he's a vicious hitter, so he's going to have to be hitting his best buddy, and they became very close during COVID because they had limited practices and so forth. But that would be, they'd spend a lot of time at each other's house and other people's house and stuff during that period of time. But I would like to see Michael Taft. I just can't imagine anybody better than him at the walk-on level. But that's kind of my feelings on the awards there.
I agree, and I think the thing with Travis Hunter, I saw him get burned a few times at corner, but you got to understand he's playing both sides of the ball. I wonder if Deion Sanders wasn't the coach and Shedeur Sanders was a quarterback, if he still would have gotten an award. I think it's a very media-driven thing now. And then I think of like what MVP means and why is Cam Scattleboo not invited to this thing, man? I thought that ASU needed him so bad to get those wins, and I really believe that he was the reason, and no disrespect to Levitt, the quarterback there, who was awesome this year, and Kenny Dillingham, which you made a great point about for possibly being the coach of the year over Signetti, which I agree too. I think it sucks that Scattleboo wasn't invited. Now here's my problem: they all deserve it. I don't know, I think they all deserve it. It's just it's hard to give it to one person, and I always root for the little guy, so I personally would have voted for Scattleboo. You'd see like 2 votes or something. One of them would have been mine for Cam Scattleboo, because I really think that he meant more to that team than maybe Travis Hunter would have meant to Colorado. And I could be wrong. I mean, like I said, Hunter was a unicorn, like you said, too. And Genty was an absolute beast, too. It's just tough. But I liked your argument, what you said about Dillingham comparing him to Signetti, but I have the same problem. I think they both deserve it. One has 1 loss, the other has 2 losses. They both made the playoffs, but I think that Dillingham, you could make a great argument that he should have been coach of the year, Paul.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned that. That was going to be one of my. I just kind of slipped my mind, but Kirk Signetti got a boost from that media blitz at midseason when they went to Columbus and played Ohio State. And, of course, they got dominated by the Buckeyes. But he's got a big personality. He's kind of got that cockiness and that flair that people like. And I think his case for coach of the year was bolstered significantly by all that media coverage that Indiana got around midseason. Deserved media recognition, but his case was bolstered. I think Arizona State, what Kenny Dillingham inherited there in Tempe, left behind by Herm Edwards, the sanctions and so forth, was a very difficult situation. You've got an Arizona State team. A lot of people don't like to hear this, and I know you're from you indicated you're a Wisconsin fan and may be from that area, but the Big 12, according to Jeff Sagarin, and his rankings are based – his conference rankings give the midpoint quite a bit of emphasis. And I don't know exactly what it is, but it's basically the average power rating of each team in the conference divided by the number of teams is, I think, a pretty fair way to explain it. The Big 12 this year was slightly stronger than the Big 10, according to Sagarin, just by a minuscule margin, despite the top heaviness of the Big 10, which is obviously much deeper at the top than the Big 12. But in the Big 12, you got to play losable games every week, basically. In the Big 10, you don't have to play losable games every week. You could lose, sure, but they're not nearly the caliber of that second half, bottom half of the Big 12. In Arizona State, and media days in Las Vegas in July, 16 teams in the Big 12, and Arizona State, the media picked them 16th. So for him to be picked 16th in the preseason media poll by those who cover the league, and then to come in and do what he did, I think you can only give it to one. I mean, there's always going to be multiple deserving candidates because there's always going to be superlative performances. But I think Kenny Dillingham deserves that award or deserved it. And I think there's still maybe a couple of Coach of the Year awards out there, and hopefully maybe he'll get one of them. But what a job he's done there for Arizona State.
He will get his payday at least. And, looking at the top 35, there's a ton of Big 12 teams. You can even say the top 25. You got Baylor right there, right? Iowa State's number 27. 28 is BYU. Oh, there is a ton of Big 12 teams in this thing. And I actually think that Baylor, believe it or not, which I took 60-1 to win the conference before the season, might be the best Big 12 team right now. And so that is an interesting thought that I've always had. I just thought that they've choked away some games, including that Hail Mary against Colorado. Let's get into some games, man. We could talk about this great stuff forever about, who should be in and who should be out awards and all that fun stuff. But I know your focus is going to be the playoffs, but I want to quick cover the 2 bowls here. on the 20th before that. And you have the Staff DNA Cure Bowl, Ohio versus Jacksonville State. Jacksonville State's +3. The total is 54.5. You know, you look at the transfer portal, you got some guys from Jacksonville State in there, starting safety, starting outside linebackers, starting cornerbacks. But last year they didn't play in the game, so I wonder if that's a Rich Rod thing. I wonder if Rich Rod's got one foot out the door. Ohio's motivation. What's funny about this bowl in itself is that both of these teams won their conferences. So I always like to fade the team that won their conference. I mean, in general, of course, it's always number dependent, Paul, but they both won, so they're playing each other. It's just kind of like, I just hope they enjoy themselves on vacation here. Net yards per play, Ohio gets it by 0.34. Coaching bowl ATS, you don't got nothing for Brian Smith, who's the interim for Ohio. And Jacksonville State, Rich Rod is only 2 for 10 in bowl games. This guy does not seem to care too much about bowl games. I think this is a fair line, but I do lean the over because Jacksonville State, even though they're a big running team, they tend to go under or over a lot. But I will say Ohio's defense in yards per rush ranks 10th in the nation, allowing only 3.1. But this is going to be an interesting game, and I think a lot of these early games kind of go over because there's less of a defensive appeal to these teams trying to stop anybody. You know, it's kind of almost like a NBA All-Star game feel a little bit sometimes on these early ones. So that's my thought on that one. Any quick thoughts on this one?
Well, Rich Rod's out the door. I'll say that. Rod Smith, their offensive coordinator, will be Jacksonville State's coach. And he got named interim coach, I believe. So,
okay,
you know, he won't be there. If what I read, and this just came out, you know, probably earlier today. You know, we talk about getting up early. Sometimes I can't remember when if it's yesterday or today or what I ate for lunch or whatever. But in the last 24 hours, I think I read somewhere that Rich Rod wouldn't coach the bowl game and that Rod Smith, their offensive coordinator, would be the interim coach.
He's at West Virginia now, sounds like, Rich Rod.
Yeah, he took the head coaching job there at West Virginia, went back to Morgantown. So he's I
see that now. I wrote this up yesterday morning or the night before, so that's probably just missed it.
Yeah,
so.
No, I know how it goes. There's just there's so much, especially now with the transfer portal and the coaching changes. It's just it's just impossible to. There's so many moving parts to it. But you know, this game to me is, unfortunately, as much as I like to try to, take advantage of chaos and confusion, because I think it's the friend of the hardworking handicapper. Sometimes in these bowl games, especially these non-New Year's Six and the non-playoff ones, you know, it's just hard to get a gauge for who's going to be playing, you know, and who's going to be coaching and so forth. And with Jacksonville State's situation with Rodriguez, you know, no longer there and things kind of in flux. And on top of that, Ohio they really look good to me against Miami of Ohio in the MAC championship game. They were dominant. I actually had Miami in that game, so kind of stung a little bit. But I was just floored at how well they played and how easily they disposed of the Redhawks. So they were very, very impressive in that bowl game. So I guess my lean would be to Ohio in that December 20th bowl.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. Now that Rich Rod's out, you know, and I'd look to the over. I think it's funny you got both interim coaches here. It's just one of those situations that college football needs to fix. I wanted to talk to you about that, but I think we can both agree the transfer portal needs to be put in way later than it is. The academics is always a second thought, but they can still stay at their school and finish the spring semester and start in the summer is what I say. So who cares about the spring ball? It's only the fans of that actual team cares about that as much. So I think that this is a massive problem that I'd love to get past because it's really messing me up and it's taking me a lot of my time, you know, in these situations. But no disagreement here. I don't have a side in this one, and I could see Ohio doing really well. And yeah, I was luckily on Ohio during that game against Miami, just by the way they finished the season. But I was worried about that one, but they did kind of come through for me on that one. It's funny, Rich Rod, I remember when he was coaching for West Virginia that he went to Michigan afterwards and how badly that went, Paul. It was just a crazy time, and him back going to Michigan in college football, and it almost really hurt his career.
Yeah, it just goes to show, these fans in college football, they are starved for a winner. It doesn't matter if you're West Virginia or wherever we're talking about, and they'll forgive and forget if they think he gives them a better chance to be successful. And I think he said all the right things. Looking at his press conference, he said I should have never left, and whether he meant it or not, I think you've got to handle it better than he handled it. His exit to Ann Arbor, but you're going to take the Michigan job. If you're at West Virginia, all things being equal, although West Virginia has one of the most passionate college football fan bases in all of college football, they're incredible. But yeah, it's a different ball game. But I think we can, just to touch quickly on the transfer portal issue. I mean, it's a major problem, not only for guys like us, but these bowl sponsors, they pay a lot of money to sponsor these bowls, and then they get these games where a lot of the most prominent players are not there, and the players are just in control. The paradigm has shifted over the last 10 years or so, and the reason that you have NIL and now starting, I guess, next season, the revenue sharing is either there was a lawsuit filed about 2010, and then the threat of more lawsuits. So they didn't. It's not like the NCAA wanted to do it. I'm not saying that they weren't going to do it ever, but NIL was, they were fearing litigation, and somebody told them the inevitable: you're not going to win, in today's climate. So you have to make concessions, and it's just a mess. That's a podcast for another day. But transfer portal got to be moved back. I think right now it's 20 days. They need to shorten it maybe to 10 to 14. And they need to start at about January 4th or 5th after
100%.
the new year, and end at about the 15th before most people start school. If they're worried about them enrolling on time for the spring semester, might get off to a late start. But yeah, they got to push it back into early January, shorten it to 10 days, and go from there.
Yeah, I think they can still stay at school. You transfer via football status and just start in the summer. That's kind of like with the slight. You got to have the slight punishment for this, and maybe NIL. It goes to a fund that gets dispersed, and if you don't play in your postseason game, you get 30% punishment or something. I think you have to tie that in. Otherwise, why we bother having these games? But hey, man, there's no perfect answer. Those are some of my early thoughts about trying to fix this horrible situation. Let's move on to the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl. Tulane versus Florida. Florida's minus 14, total 49.5. I took a bad number on this ball. I thought it was a good number at 13. Now it's all the way up to 14. I think that Florida's motivation is I put medium low. It's not like beating Tulane's going to help them that much, but at the same time, they finished the season well. They cashed my over 4.5 season win total nice and early, which was nice. And they're kind of feeling pretty good. I almost think that maybe they're happy with their coach over there, in Florida. I'm not 100% sure, but it's one of those things with Billy Napier. He doesn't show up for bowl games. He's only 0-4 ATS for bowls. John Summerall, young coach, 1-0 for Tulane there. He obviously coached Troy before that, but he had a lot of success through Tulane. The thing that worries me, well, obviously besides, the transfer portal, because Tulane's quarterback, Darian Mensah, committed to Duke, right? And then a couple other guys did as well. Not a ton, though, but they also lost a backup. It sounds like Ty Thompson said he's going to play, though, at least. But he didn't do a lot there. He threw 11 passes, Florida has some injuries. Their top cornerback's out for the year. Their cornerback 2, Devin Moore, hasn't played since week 10. I expect more guys getting out of Florida. They have a tight end transferring. They have a defensive line transferring, and Jack Pyburn. Tulane's got a better yards per play, but the strength of schedule really goes to Florida. My problem is, can Tulane stop the run because they couldn't stop Armies? Is Florida going to run all over them? That's my question. I still think Tulane should be good enough to cover 14 points, so I'm sticking with my play. I'm playing Tulane plus the 14, mainly because, too, Bailey Napier is still 0-4 against the spread in the bowl games. Paul.
Yeah, I don't have a strong opinion here, but like you, I don't like to. I tend to gravitate towards taking the double-digit dogs in the bowl games, especially when it's a school from a so-called, smaller, less prominent conference. Not that the American Athletic Conference is a smaller conference, but it's certainly not the Southeastern Conference. So for them to be playing Florida is a bigger deal to them than Florida to be playing Tulane, and here they are getting double digits. I am a little bit concerned. Ty Thompson, he's a former 5-star recruit that signed with Oregon out of high school, a big-time recruit there, and he's never panned out. He can run, and he's athletic, but he's not much in the passing game. Mm-hmm. So you'll see a great athlete because he'll come out of the pocket and run it, but I worry about I worry a little bit about Tulane's ability to muster offense. But like you said, Florida's got a lot of pie burning. Some of the others, they got some people in the portal and got some other potential opt-out situations. So, for me, I can see where you're coming from there. It would be Tulane or nothing. I certainly couldn't take Florida laying 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, Florida finished well, but Tulane was still a pretty good competitor. A month or so ago, people were talking like maybe they would get in over Boise State. Obviously didn't happen. But that's a really interesting thought. Let's talk about playoffs, my man. First game, Indiana, number 10, at Notre Dame, number 7. Notre Dame's favored by 7.5 points. Total's 51. This is at Notre Dame Stadium in South Bend, Indiana. This is 2 teams from Indiana. Paul, why don't you break this one down for us?
Yeah, coming up on Friday night, the 20th, you've got an Indiana team that was kind of the darling of the college football season. It's just been an historic season for the Hoosiers, their first 10-win season in school history, and now they're facing kind of the brand of not only one of the major brands, now the true blue bloods of all time in college football, Notre Dame, but an in-state rival. I like Notre Dame here. This is a Notre Dame team that is a 28-point favorite, was shocked by Northern Illinois in week 2, but since that loss, they've won 10 straight by 30.7 points per game. Only one of those wins in the 10-game winning streak, current 10-game winning streak, by fewer than 2 touchdowns. Riley Leonard, their quarterback, who's had some injury issues throughout his career, is healthy, playing well, gaining confidence in his first year with the Irish. Jeremiah Love, the running back, he's closing in on 1,000 yards. He's really developed nicely in their defense, one of the best in the country. Indiana's only game this year on the big stage against Ohio State. I think it's fair to say they failed miserably. The last 3 quarters, they looked totally out of their element, got beat 38-15. But I think Notre Dame, I know Coach Cignetti at Indiana said the right things, that we were overwhelmed by the noise. We were unprepared for some of the stuff. We'll do better this time. But I'm going to, until I see it, I kind of expect to see more of the same on the big stage from the Hoosiers. I don't think Gene Hackman's walking through that door Friday night.
Gene Hackman,
I'll take Notre Dame minus the points.
All right, you're taking the 7.5. I wonder if this gets down to 7. The funny thing is the numbers say Indiana is right with Notre Dame almost. I mean, Indiana's got a 0.35 net yards per play. But here's the thing. If your belief is the Big Ten under the top 3-4 teams is soft, which a lot of people believe, then you're probably looking a little bit more towards Notre Dame because the stats say that Indiana could be in this game. But you saw it once already. I wonder if they get over that hump and kind of think to themselves, all right, well, we faced Ohio State. Let's kind of build up. But the problem is you're going to still have a big home field advantage for Notre Dame. Even though it's in Indiana, they're probably going to let, 5,000 Indiana fans in, maybe something like that. I don't know the numbers of the allotments in this situation. It's probably going to be more than a regular season game, but there's still going to be a lot of screaming Irish fans out there, which is very tough. How about this next one? We got Saturday, December 21st, number 11 SMU at number 6 Penn State. Penn State's laying 8.5. The total is 53.5 in Beaver Stadium, State College, Pennsylvania, on TNT. I'm telling you, I'm giving Penn State 3.5 for home field advantage. Thank God it's not a whiteout because I'd have to give them like 5.5 for home field advantage. If it was a night game, I think they're still going to wear white, though, from what I'm hearing. But maybe you have a play on this one for us.
This is one of the games I do like Notre Dame, and there's some 7 out there too in the marketplace. Just looking on Notre Dame, so certainly if you're going to take the Irish,
Penn State, you mean?
Well, I was talking about my previous. I was just saying we were talking about the 7.5. I was just saying there is some 7 available.
Oh, right.
Backwards.
Oh, gotcha. Sorry, my fault.
7 if you take the favorite. But in this game, I really, I just don't have a strong feeling. One thing I think that could hurt SMU is the fact it could be a literal whiteout on the ground. It's going to be very cold. There's going to be some snow apparently on Friday. Could bleed into Saturday. It's going to be high in the 20s with some wind. Again, it could snow, so it's not really what the guys from Texas are going to be used to, and that would certainly play in the Penn State's favor there. And SMU, they played good defense this year, but they certainly hadn't faced a running back tandem like Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. So I worry about that a little bit. But then on SMU's side, they've really had a magical season. Their quarterback, Kevin Jennings, which a lot of people maybe haven't seen extensively this year, he is just kind of a magician. He's a great athlete. He just kind of has that it factor. So be interesting to see, though, what this SMU rush defense, this average giving up less than 100 yards on the ground, giving up less than 3 yards per carry. Be interesting to see how they match up against Singleton, Allen, and company for Penn State.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting for sure. I like SMU. I think that this game has the most let's just say out of all the 7.5 point favorites, you throw those 3 together, you got the Tennessee, you got, SMU, and you got Indiana. I think SMU's got the best chance to win this game outright. And there's some reasons for this. And first of all, the way that ACC championship game couldn't have went better for Clemson. Not one flag was thrown for Clemson that whole game. I almost like the ACC played their cards pretty well in that situation. The best thing that could have happened for the ACC is what exactly happened in that championship game right there. Now, I know, that Dabo Sweeney's going to have these kids buttoned up like he did, but I think that was a special comeback for SMU, even though they didn't win the game. I was wondering if they were going to go for 2 there. I was like, man, do you go for 2 right there? Maybe finish this thing out right there. Sometimes we got the momentum, but I think that there's a couple things going against Penn State. And for one, it's big game James Franklin, who's not a big game coach. He actually loses all his big game. Against top 5 schools, he's 0-12. I think his record's still pretty bad against top 25 or top 15. I don't have the numbers in front of me exactly. I had them the other day. But Penn State has a slight net yards per play advantage of 0.44. Both teams are pretty healthy, obviously, coming in. I think you don't get this far unless you're pretty healthy in this situation. But, Penn State's got a small strength of schedule advantage, 44th to 61st. But this goes back to, do you believe the Big Ten, the teams that Penn State played, who they avoided Oregon, they avoided Indiana, they got Ohio State at home, and they couldn't cover their own spread there. SMU's an interesting team, and I like teams with offense for backdoor capabilities. You're looking at 8.5 points here. A guy like Jennings, Kevin Jennings, that quarterback, he can backdoor people. And I think Penn State could be that candidate that they're backdooring just because he's a dual threat quarterback. And I think that's where Penn State can struggle, is against a dual threat quarterback in this situation. The defense is tough, but they're much better against pocket passers rather than dual threat situations. The thing is the explosive plays, I think, is going to be huge for SMU. What's funny is that they have a low success rate on offense, ranking 52nd, but explosiveness, 8th. That's why Penn State's defense tends to struggle. Their explosive play rating on defense is 87th. So if this spread's going to be up to the quarterback, Kevin Jennings, in my opinion, and I think he can get there. But if you're doing your survivors and stuff and you have to pick 3 of the games, this is one you either avoid or I'm going to pick SMU. I have to pick 3 games in Survivor this week. I'm going to pick SMU, and I don't care if I lose because I want to win. So I think that this is a situation where they get ahead of big game James. I'm taking the 8.5 points, and I'm going to take a little small play on the money line, Paul, for plus 250.
Good deal. Yeah, that would be, one of these underdogs is going to win. So like you said, it might be SMU.
Well, let's talk about a game up your alley. Clemson versus Texas. Texas minus 11, total 51. Texas, I'm giving them the full 3 for playing at Darrell K. Royal Texas Memorial Stadium. I'm giving them 3 points. Maybe you know that they should get more or less. What are your thoughts on this big game for the SEC and ACC?
Yeah, I'm seeing right now kind of a consensus line. Texas favored by 11 with a total of 51.5. And I'm going to recommend a pair of correlated selections on this game on both the side and total. Going to go with underdog Clemson plus 11 and the under 51.5. And the reason for my primary reasons, there are many reasons, but the primary reason for my positions here is Texas's great defense, one, which I believe is the nation's best. I mean, they give up an average of 12.5 points per game, only 3.8 yards per play, just have elite NFL top talent at all 3 levels of defense. So Texas, very, very, very good defensively, but their offense, especially in the second half of the year, has just been kind of bogged down, especially in the red zone. They're averaging for the year less than 2 yards per carry in the red zone, which teams obviously are going to average less because it's more compact and the defense is tight, more tightly bunched and so forth. But Texas has just really struggled in the red zone offense. Their last 4 games in regulation, they've only averaged 21 points a game against Arkansas, Kentucky, Texas A&M, and then Georgia in the SEC championship game. So I'm looking for it to be a tight game. This is not Dabo Swinney's best team. Is certainly not anywhere on a par with the teams of 5, 6, 7 years ago that were winning and contending for national championships. But it's still a good team. They've got 5-star guys, defensive tackle Peter Woods, linebacker Sammy Brown, still have some big-time performers. I think Clemson keeps this within single digits, lower scoring game. So Clemson plus 11, under 51.5.
All right. I think that Clemson is I think that Clemson's the biggest fraudulent team in these playoffs. And I think that even Boise State might be able to beat this team. Now, saying that, do I want to lay 11 points? Not really. Steve Sarkisian's 2-4 in postseason play in bowl games, 2 wins, 4 losses against the spread. Dabo Swinney is 12-8. But Texas's defense is the best unit on the field. And you made a great point about how poor they've been in the red zone. Hell, we just saw it in the Georgia game, right? I think the fact that Ewers isn't dual threat hurts them in situations, and that I think this day and age, you want a dual threat quarterback. Clemson gets dominated, though, in all facets of the game. If you look at literally every single advanced stat, it really favors Texas. Texas also has a plus 1.38 net yards per play advantage. On paper, Texas should be way better, but at the same time, Steve Sarkisian, big game spot. He's a little bit like James Franklin. The under is my favorite play, and I took it when it was early. I took it at 52.5 or 53. I'd take this down to 48, 47 points, in my opinion. I think this game goes way under the total, and there's a chance that Clemson's not going to score much, Paul, so I'm on your side for sure.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I do have a little bit of reservation, and I agree with you. Clemson's not, they're not a team that's going to win 4 games and win the national championship. They don't have that kind of talent. But it's more a bet against Texas on the side, and then the total. Again, Texas's great defense and their struggles in the red zone on offense.
Well, they have a big game coach for Clemson. Let's face it. Dabo Swinney is a championship coach, so that's what worries you about if you're thinking about laying it with Texas. I know we only got a minute or 2 left. Let's move to the last game, Tennessee, Ohio State. Ohio State minus 7.5, total 46.5. What do you have for us, Paul?
Yeah, this game, I don't have a great opinion on the side. I think the number in that 7, 7.5, 8 range is right. But where I like, this game is, again, on the total. You're going to have, again, cold weather, not really conducive perhaps to offensive fireworks. But kind of my primary reason for liking the under, there's some 47 out there. Mostly the market's painted 46.5. But I just think it's going to be a low-scoring game. I think both these coaches, they know their quarterback's limitations. For Ohio State, first of all, we saw Will Howard against Michigan. He's now thrown 33 career interceptions. has an interception rate of 3%, which is extremely high for college football and certainly high for a championship level quarterback. So I think not only will Ohio State try to keep Howard out of harm's way, Nico, Tennessee's quarterback in the last most of the season for that matter, they've really not gone vertical much in the passing game with him. It's been conservative. It's been short range, mid-range throws. They've got a great running back in Dylan Sampson for Tennessee. And then, of course, Ohio State's got Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins. So I think you're going to see just old black and blue football, both teams trying to win with ball control, running the football, playing tough defense because they're both two of the top 5 defenses in college football and not turning the ball over. So I think we're going to see some conservatism, going to be cold. I think it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I like the under 47 in Tennessee, Ohio State.
No, it makes total sense to me. And I don't have a play on the side either of this. I very much lean to the under. I think both defensive lines are going to have the advantage, especially with the injuries on Ohio State. And I know you got a roll. Do you have any like plus money plays or beer bet bangers or anything out there? Because I got one to run by you in case you don't.
Well, I'll throw you one real quick. I do have to got an appointment, and I apologize. We talked about it beforehand because your show's it's really I really enjoy being on you, and it's a lot of fun just talking things over like we're at the bar, maybe having a cup of coffee or maybe another cup or whatever, depending on your preference. But my bangers here, beer bet bangers, is going to be in college basketball. Take a unit, whatever your unit is, and split it. So bet half on one of these recommendations, half on the other. And market-wide will probably be similar, but college basketball to win the national championship, 2 real long shots. Grand Canyon, and there's a hedging component here. Grand Canyon at 200-1, wow. McNeese State at 500-1, available at the Westgate. If those teams make the tournament, either or both, I don't think they're going to be playing that play-in game in Dayton, Ohio. And you can take their opponent. You can kind of figure out how you want to hedge. But you can take their opponent each step of the way on the money line and say, hey, I bet $50 originally. I'm going to bet the opponent to win 100. And you're diluting that potential massive payout. But if they make the tournament, either or both, you're assuring yourself of a profit if you know how to properly hedge. So hopefully that makes sense to most of your listeners out there. You just hedge. If they survive and go to the next game, you take the opponent who will probably be favored on the money line, and you're going to be able to lock in a profit. They're not going to be huge underdogs, neither one of these teams, because they're good. So you're not going to be laying minus, 1,500, right, taking the favorite against them. So it's not like you're putting a huge amount of money, on the line. So that's my beer bet banger. Hopefully that fell within the Rex there.
It did. It absolutely. It did by a lot because you got 200-1 and 500-1, and you remember Grand Canyon made it to I believe the Elite 8 last year. Should have beat Alabama in that game, and so that was right up my alley. I love GCU, the Lopes, man. I'm excited to go to another game this year and watch a little GCU basketball. And Miss McNeese, and last year I called them the Bee's Knees, McNeese State. So I didn't get to watch much of them yet this year. I'm really looking forward to that. My beer bet banger is it says most likely game to go with the highest scoring game. Because I like the unders that we both talked about, I went plus 260 on Notre Dame, Indiana. I think, you can maybe think that SMU Penn State has the chance, but I think Notre Dame, Indiana has the chance at plus 260. It's some of the best odds that I could find for them to go with the highest total in this football matchup this weekend for the college football playoffs. So out of the 4 games, that's what I think, Paul, and plus 260 ain't too bad.
Not at all. No, that's a good ticket, and I'll keep that in mind and be rooting for you.
Well, where could our listeners get your wonderful information and plays?
Yeah, I tell you, first of all, I try to be active on Twitter or X. My handle at Paul Stone Sports. And if anybody wants to take their interest to a higher level, I do have a website as well, paulstonesports.org. Again, that's paulstonesports.org.
On your way out, who wins it all?
I like Ohio State. I think if Will Howard can take care of the football, I've said all year they've got the best team in the nation if you discount 21 of the 22 positions. So if he can just hold serve, I like Ohio State. And you might sprinkle a little bit on Notre Dame. They were 12-1. They're now maybe 8-1. I think Notre Dame, this is a wide open year. Anybody could win. Somebody might come from slightly off the pace. That team could be Notre Dame.
That's wonderful, Paul. Thank you so much for coming on. We'll be talking soon.
Thank you. Appreciate you having me on.
All right. Well, Paul had a roll, but I'm going to talk a little bit more about this Ohio State game real quick. I think that the under's probably the best look. I was really hoping that this number is going to go to 6.5, but I'm not sure if it will. I think this is a great number at 7.5 for the books. I think you should get some good action on both sides. My problem with Ohio State is the fact that they lost their center. Seth McLaughlin just recently out for the year, and obviously the left tackle Josh Simmons has been out a few weeks now. But, Ohio State's got better numbers. They're plus 0.76 in net yards per play. Both defenses, like I said, have advantage over the offenses, especially in the trenches, but Ohio State's got more upside as their offense is ranked second in EPA to Tennessee's at 29th. But, Buckeye quarterback Will Howard has more big game experience than Nico Iamaleava. And I just think that's kind of the gold standard coming in here. And you got to imagine that this Ohio State team has just been reeling since that Michigan game. And now that's kind of behind them. They can put it behind them. They can play some big-time football right now. I would rather lay it, to be honest with you, with Ohio State than I would to take the points with Tennessee in this situation. So those are my thoughts. Definitely lean to the under, but it's at 46.5. If it gets back to 47.5, that's when I'm going to fire. I think that maybe the books get pressured with some over money, and then we can take that under a little bit later. But those are my thoughts on that game. Let's go to Monday, December 23rd, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, Coastal Carolina versus UTSA. UTSA -9, total 55.5 in Brooks Stadium, Conway, South Carolina. I still think that Coastal Carolina's motivation is at least medium. They're playing at home. They want to finish their season with a big win, but UTSA's motivation should be medium. They turned it up at the end to make the bowl game. Do they care to win it? I don't know. Maybe. But this is literally a home game for Coastal Carolina. You got to factor that in so far. But here's the thing. Coastal Carolina, they have both their quarterbacks in the transfer portal in Noah Kim and Ethan Vasco. Head coach Tim Beck said redshirt freshman Tad Hudson with 0 snaps is probably going to be the starter here, but they also lost starting tight end, top cornerback, starting offensive linebacker, another cornerback with 362 snaps, 2 running backs, Christian Washington and Simeon Price, a bunch of defensive linemen. There's just a laundry list of guys, and plus they still have injuries. Left guard Andy Walton may still be injured. Wide receiver Cameron Wright may still be injured. Linebacker Shane Bruce. So as much as you might want to win this game at home, UTSA has only lost starting defensive end Ronald Triplett in the portal and running back Kevorian Barnes, who had 233 snaps. But, I guess besides wide receiver Jace Wilson, they're pretty healthy coming in. Head coach Jeff Traylor says he expects most of this roster to be available for the bowl games for UTSA. The net yards per play is about equal, but the key stats is nothing is more key with all these opt-outs, and the Roadrunners have really come along since mid-season, man. They have just been looking great mid-season, and they've been stopping the run, and if you don't have quarterbacks on the other side, they rank 13th in opponent yards per rush. That's where they can really do some damage, is stopping the run and maybe scoring some points themselves like they did the second half of the season. I like UTSA. It's a small play for me. Even laying 9 points here in this situation, I'm playing them minus the 9.
So hot right now.
Next game, the famous Idaho Potato Bowl, Northern Illinois versus Fresno State. Fresno State +3, total 42. This could change all by December 23rd, so I don't know what to say about the reward of going to Boise State for either team. But I do think that both quarterbacks are in the transfer portal with Ethan Hampton and Mikey Keene, so that's interesting. But at the same time, Fresno State has a new head coach in Matt Entz, but Tim Skipper is going to be coaching the bowl. Tom Hammock is a much better bowl coach, 2-0 against the spread, as we know anyway. Just a ton of opt-outs on both sides. I don't really want to go through it all. Just a bunch of receivers, cornerbacks, defensive tackles, really on both sides of the ball, including the quarterback. So that makes you look towards the run a little bit. With all these opt-outs and looking at the quarterbacks being gone, I think the Huskies are the right side, at least to win. They're -3, though. And the Huskies rank 44th in rush EPA. Fresno only ranks 88th in opponent rushing success rate. So I expect the Huskies to get a lot of first downs on the ground. The Fresno cannot run the ball, ranking 122nd in yards per rush. With Mikey Keene out, this could be bad. I think that Northern Illinois is a wonderful parlay piece. If you're going to get cute on that day, you can definitely parlay both to win and probably get more than even money. UTSA is going to be like -400 or 500. And then you're going to get, the -190, -200 on the NIU side. You'll be close to even money, I would think, on a parlay like that. But, I'm just leaning NIU just because so many guys are out on both sides. Maybe Fresno does better, but I just can't see Fresno being all that motivated to go to a place they have to go to every single freaking year in the Mountain West at Boise State and play on the blue turf. So those are my thoughts. I'm leaning NIU -3. Tuesday, December 24th, you have the Hawaii Bowl, South Florida versus San Jose State. San Jose State's -4.5. Total is 62. Clarence T. Ching Athletics Complex in Honolulu, 8 p.m. This could be a late game. Right, Christmas Eve, baby. Maybe Santa's going to come down your chimney while this game's still on if it hits some overtime. South Florida's motivation should be pretty low. I think the kids are going to have some fun in Hawaii. San Jose State's motivation, I think, is going to be medium high because they travel to Hawaii in their conference, but Ken Matalolo is from Hawaii. He's 7-4 ATS in bowl games. He's kind of like a homecoming here. I don't think it's going to be a huge crowd at this game, but I do give San Jose State a little home field advantage here. Now, San Jose State, both teams have some transfers, a couple cornerbacks from transfer portal for San Jose State, backup quarterback Emmett Brown, and USF's got a safety out, Taufik Bayard, and starting defensive tackle Doug Blue Ellie signed with Rutgers. San Jose State's got a massive yards per play advantage of plus 1.25. The key stats is South Florida ranks 37th in rush EPA and 9th in explosiveness, while San Jose State's defense can somewhat stop the run, ranking 25th in rush EPA. I watched San Jose State blow that cover against Boise State, but that was more about them just making stupid mistakes rather than stopping Ashton Genty, because I thought they did a pretty good job against Ashton Genty. South Florida's Alex Golish is 1-0 against the spread in bowl games, but I already said Kenny is 7-4 on San Jose State side. What's going to win out? I think that, like I said, the Spartans did a pretty good job stopping Ashton Genty. I feel that this is a game for San Jose State. Do I want to lay 4.5? Not really. But I'm going to give you a lean to San Jose State until more info comes out. Obviously, Christmas Eve is about a week away anyway, so we definitely have some time to think about this. So that's what you're going to get for college football. And we're going to talk more about that, obviously, for our Christmas show. Now, let's get into a little NFL Week 16. All right. NFL Week 16 is Wednesday, around 1:44 Mountain Time, 2:44 Central Time, noon 44 Pacific Time. And, didn't get a ton of injury stuff. There's going to be like some walkthroughs and a lot of like limited participants. We're not going to know nothing until Saturday or Friday, I guess. Friday, the most, and Saturday, some stuff pops in. I mean, that's just how the NFL injury report goes. And as a content provider here at the Odds Breakers, we just got to do the best we can because we don't like having podcasts coming out on Saturday. Lines are moving and, it's just a much better time to do it on Wednesday when we can give you some assumptions. But I still think there's some plays out there, and that's why some of the early plays tend to pay off. I think a lot of these lines are going to be on the move. And so let's get right into it. Denver versus the LA Chargers. Chargers -2.5, total 42. This is an interesting game. The spot screams the Chargers. Denver had no business getting back into that game against the Colts. Jonathan Taylor, bonehead, drops the football. Very disappointed in that. Not from a betting standpoint because I won the bet. I'm disappointed that I keep seeing it in the NFL, and I shouldn't have won that bet against the Colts because I bet Denver, but at the same time, I probably should have won my Jaguars bet. Anyways, it's a great spot for the Chargers. They got embarrassed last week. Freaking embarrassed. Tampa puts up 40 on them. A 40 bomb. Threw all over this team. Now, can Bo Nix do that? I'm not so sure. But what's so funny is that the reason people lose in sports betting is because they do what they saw last week. And remember, I always say, if you just fade the perception from the week before, bet on the team that looked bad, bet against the team that looked good, you're going to be a long-term winner just doing that in sports betting. Maybe you'll hit 52.8%. I don't know what the numbers are. Especially, it just depends upon the sport, too. But I have to think that Jim Harbaugh is in these guys' faces for what happened. I know Jim Harbaugh as a coach. I knew him as a player with my team, the Chicago Bears, which I'm very sad to say. And he's just not going to put up with this shit. And that's the difference between a good coach and a bad coach. Now, unfortunately, Sean Payton's a good coach. He's done some dumb things in the past. But there's two things going against the Chargers here. Number one, it's a very injured team on a short week. And number two, they're playing a very healthy team on a short week. So, it's that situation. There's some questionable guys with the Chargers, and I'm really curious to see who's playing. It's going to make me feel a lot better if Denzel Perryman is playing, He's just very important here. And Junior Colson, I don't know what's up with him. I thought he was going to be a better draft pick than he actually was. He did play. Got a couple tackles, 6. He doesn't cover really well. He came from Michigan, so you think that, Harbaugh guy. But I would rather see Denzel Perryman at right inside linebacker and calling the plays. You still got Khalil Mack, who's kind of a part-time guy, comes in, passing downs. He gives it all for like 1 or 2 plays, then gives up. He doesn't have the stamina he used to. But there's a couple guys that I'm worried about, and one, it's Elijah Molden, the free safety there, and Cam Hart, the left corner. They lost Asante Samuel to IR, so that's not great. But at the same time, Samuel might play. He's actually scheduled to come off IR, so I really want to find out about this. I want to know if Asante Samuel can come back. Eli Apple will not be back yet. He might come back in January. But those are 2 guys that I'm kind of keying in on, and I'd like to see either Cam Hart or Elijah Molden be able to play. I don't think Cam Hart can, though. He's got concussed, so he's probably out. And Elijah Molden hurt his knee. But my worry is that Bo Nix is a talented quarterback. He definitely aired some balls last week, but I don't think either team's going to be able to run the ball much against each other. The Broncos are number 4 in rush EPA. While the Chargers are kind of, they're number 11. They were better when Perryman played. But the Broncos are a really terrible rushing team as it is, though. They can't seem to move the ball well on the ground. Trust me, I have Javonte Williams and Estime is as my running backs in some fantasy leagues that I could not make the playoffs in. And yeah, there's some bitterness there. But either way, rush EPA, Denver is pretty bad themselves, ranking number 20th. I actually think it's worse than that number really shows. And the Chargers were really good at running the ball, but yet they kind of lost when J.K. Dobbins went out. So they kind of went all the way down to number 17. Justin Herbert's a little banged up. He's got this massive taped ankle that he's been playing with. So he doesn't have a lot of mobility. So it worries me. But from a spot, man, Jesus, you can't get a better spot right now to bet on the Chargers. It's a divisional game. I even think that maybe using the Broncos as a teaser leg ain't the worst idea either. So I'm going to wait more and give you a strong lean. to Chargers minus 2.5. Let's move on to the Texans Chiefs. Chiefs minus 3, total 41.5. So this was Chiefs plus 2.5 until Mahomes, and I couldn't fire it quick enough. All of a sudden was listed as a full participant. Now, this was a Tuesday practice, and everybody seemed to be a full participant. But at the same time, I feel it was a little bit overblown. I feel his ankle's not as bad. And Mahomes did say that, too. This is kind of the media, too, really wanting to put a look that he's injured. Here's the thing. I like the Chiefs, and I like them up to minus 3. I think they have a good home ref in Sheffers, even though Chiefs fans think that they screwed him over before. He's also, I think, won a Super Bowl with Sheffers. And I also like the fact that he's a home ref, but going way past that, just the Chiefs as a minus 3 points or less on the line, meaning they're either a dog or up to minus 3. Since 2018, I ran this query on Killer Sports. They are 21-9-1 ATS. That's 70%, and 21-10, straight up 67.7%. If you look at them just as a favorite from 0 to 3 points, they're 63.2%. I ran that number as well, and that's massive. I mean, Andy Reid is just good in this situation. Now you can say, well, Mahomes was in most of those games. He was in most of them. There's a few he wasn't. He was injured a little bit since 2018, but at the same time, Carson Wentz ain't bad. And this is also a play against the Houston Texans on the road. The Texans are a terrible road team, and their numbers show it. For some reason, they give up a lot more passing yards away, 222 passing yards per game away, and only 172 at home. It's like their defense steps up more when they're at home. And Azeez Al-Shaair is still suspended from that nasty hit he gave when he launched into Trevor Lawrence. So, yeah, I like the Chiefs up to 3. I'd lay 3. I think when Mahomes is announced more healthy, this will move to 3.5. So check this when you get the show, see if it's there. I believe that we're safe. I laid 2.5 personally for premium, but this will be a free play at 3. And if you didn't think you had enough action on Saturday because you have 3 college playoff games, and the Chiefs-Texans, you also have the Baltimore Ravens hosting the Pittsburgh Steelers. Minus 6 is the Ravens, total 45. Huge revenge spot. Now here, I think that I assumed that Pickens wouldn't be back this week, and I assumed that Watt was probably going to play but not announced at the very end. It's really looking like these two players are going to play. But in saying that, the Ravens are a much better team than the Steelers. The Steelers for some reason, have them figured out enough to cover every time, but I think this is the spot where it just bodes much better for the Ravens. The Ravens are very healthy. They're much more healthy than they have been in the past. And you saw last week that even when the Eagles tried to give up that game, the Steelers just could not move the ball against them at all. They could not move the ball. And this is a Baltimore team that has a hell of a lot more firepower than it ever has. You got a very healthy Henry and Justice Hill. You got Flowers and Bateman, extremely healthy. Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely, very healthy. Their whole offensive line and their backups aren't even banged up. Roquan Smith is back and healthy. This team is stacked right now, and it's perfect situation for them going into the playoffs. And I know that Pittsburgh feels like this is a division for the division. This is going to be a grindy game. No, I think this is one that Baltimore shows them who the real division winner is. And they seriously put one on the Steelers. Now, my numbers are about -6, but I have to look at the spot, and I have to look at the upside with Lamar and the fact that the Steelers just have a lot of problems moving the ball. And you've seen Russell Wilson fade down the stretch in situations just like this in the past. He seems to beat up on the smaller teams pretty well, but now that it's stepping up in competition, I think that's going to definitely make a difference here. I also like it how the Ravens had the easier game against the Giants last week, and the Steelers just got punched in the face by the Eagles, and they have to be questioning themselves a little bit. Najee Harris a little bit in the doghouse for that fumble. And it's not like Cordero Patterson's any good. Jalen Warren might see a lot of him. Even if Pickens plays, who knows how well that's going to work for them. Now, if Wilson has an amazing game, absolutely they can be in this game because the Ravens are weak against the pass, but they're very strong against the run. I think this is a spot for the Ravens. We're going to lay the -6 for 2.5 stars.
Get busy living or get busy dying. That's goddamn right.
And if you remember, the Ravens were laying a lot against Pittsburgh away as well. So they should be laying, I believe, at least 7 points, in my opinion, in this situation. Next game. And there's going to be some ones I'm skipping here. Detroit versus Chicago. And the Chicago Bears, I don't know if you can get any lower, just beating themselves. They scored a touchdown last week that could have pulled them within 7 points of the Vikings. But unfortunately, the guy that came in as fullback didn't even report to the official. You know, this is a team that's kind of like lost, and they have like a high school offense, it seems. And it just feels like there's no direction, and the guys quit. DJ Moore quit. He quit before the season started almost, though, I think. He got his money. He's been complaining. He's constantly covered by single guy. One guy can cover him. I was watching him a lot against the Vikings. He was covered the whole game by one dude, you know? So, and he's short, so he needs to run good routes. He does not care. I think Romo Dunze cares and Keenan Allen care, but Caleb Williams is just lost. He's not coached. And you got a Lions team that's coming off a freaking loss. And yes, they don't have a defense, but they still have guys that can come in and stop the Bears that is completely incompetent looking here. I love the fact that this line went lower. Man, I cannot believe that the first 3 games in a row after Thursday we're having to play on. I'm playing the Detroit Lions -6.5. Dude, my power ratings, even with the injury Justin has, the Lions -8.5. My power rating, and that's even downgrading them -2.5 points for their injuries. And from an algorithm, I have them like -11, even giving the Bears a little home field advantage. Sorry, Bears. I know you play the Lions tough, and you have in the past, but this is the part where it's going to look really bad. Take the Lions -6.5 for 2 stars.
And so then I got a call from him saying, we don't have to worry about money no more. And I said, that's good. One less thing.
Browns, Bengals. Bengals -7.5. Total 47. This is the first game with the quarterback change. There's quite a few quarterback changes this year, and or this week, I should say. But Dorian Thompson-Robinson's announced a starter, and he's absolutely terrible at being an NFL quarterback. He's not an NFL quarterback, and he's ranked so low that most backups, numbers-wise, show better than him. And they're playing the Bengals, who have a very bad defense, very suspect defense. But, man, with DTR in that game, I don't even know how I could rate this Cleveland team. I mean, Myles Garrett's trying out there. I still see some motivation from him. Maybe Burrow has a bad game, but geez, there's no better teaser leg that I can find right now on the face of this earth that doesn't say to take the Bengals down to like a half point. Actually, 1.5 points. So at least you get under the 2 here. This is a no-brainer teaser, and I'm not going to lie. I am considering taking the actually the Bengals as a play at 7.5. I'm considering doing that. I have no idea how you can go from Jameis Winston, who at least has upsides. Yes, he throws a bunch of picks. You have to talk to him every single week. You have to talk to him before the game. Whatever you got to do. Pray with him. I don't know. You can't put DTR in. It is just a sign of utter defeat. I think from a power rating standpoint with the quarterback change, I have Cincinnati -8 points. not minus 7.5. I actually might even be too low on Cincinnati and maybe too high on Cleveland. Maybe this should be around 10. Going back to my power rating adjustment, I did a conservative -3 for the quarterback change. I think maybe I should be doing -4, -5. Although it's not like Winston has been, not throwing interceptions. So I was trying to be on the safe side here. But metrically, it is a spot where the Bengals are still motivated, and they know there's still a window for them. So, it's a great teaser leg. Let's leave it at that. Move to Arizona Cardinals versus the Carolina Panthers. Panthers are +4.5, total 47. Man, I'm glad we were on the Cowboys, but do you also get that super motivated Carolina team just, trying to win for the Gipper or whatever it is? They've been really putting it on a few teams until they ran into the Cowboys last week. And I think the Cowboys looked at the fact that they're dogs to Carolina, and it probably affected them a little bit. As a matter of fact, I think the Cowboys are in a bad spot, and we'll get to them. If Carolina plays their game and doesn't make mistakes, they could cover 4.5 points against the Cardinals. And the reason they can is because I've seen them do it against Tampa. Just recently against Tampa, we saw that, right? We saw them beat the New Orleans Saints. It's just things have to kind of fall, right? It's the NFL. The games are fast. They go quick. Not from a commercial standpoint, but from the time standpoint, there's not a lot of time to make plays. Yeah, it's probably a good spread. It probably makes some sense. I know that Arizona is in a much more desperate spot, though, to play some really good football. So definitely keep that in mind. But yeah, I just think that if I had to lay it, my numbers say to play Arizona, being that I have Arizona -6 in the power ratings, and it's like -8 from an algorithm standpoint. So, I mean, numbers wise, it's hard to quantify. You have to really look at the Carolina Panthers and factor in the recency more, right? Just because I feel like they have gotten a little bit better. So I do have an adjustment for that on my algorithm. I can do percentages. So let's just go, instead of whole season 70%, let's go whole season 50%. And then we'll do last 3 games, 50% for Arizona. I think that's an interesting little experiment to do. And you have Arizona still -8 points. Okay. Yeah, I mean, they just looked so bad last week against Dallas and played so bad that's why that came out like that. I'm going to believe my power rating at 6 in this situation. And, -4.5 to 6 isn't that much of an edge. So we'll just leave it as a lean for now. I'll dig into this maybe a little bit more when I get some more injury information on Trey Benson, cornerback Max Melton, 2 linebackers, Max Wilson and Jesse Lukita from the Cardinals. So want a little bit more information about that. Oh, by the way, their punter, Blake Gilkin, is on injured reserve too. So that's interesting. They lost another running back too in DeMarcado a little while back too. So they placed him on IR on Saturday actually too before the game. So Arizona's a little bit banged up. Next game, we have the Philadelphia Eagles at the Washington Commanders. Now, I have a premium play on this one, so I'm not going to get too much into this, but I will say that the Eagles tried to lose last week's game, didn't, and ended up taking care of Pittsburgh. But is this kind of like a flat spot that even though they're playing a division opponent that they need to win and maybe get home field advantage? Do they let off the gas a little bit like you saw when they played Carolina? I don't think so. But this is a huge spot for Washington, a revenge spot where they can get back at the Eagles. And Biotish didn't play last game for Washington. He was a surprise illness scratch. And so they kind of looked bad last week. But, I think this week they're going to look a little bit better against the Eagles. Very good offense coordinator there. Decent. Dan Quinn's a decent coach, I suppose. He was kind of low until this year on my totem pole, but he's kind of proven himself. This is an interesting spot, but the Eagles also can make people look pretty bad and get a lot of margin and call you frauds right to your face. Total's 45.5. I lean to the under. Rams, Jets. Jets plus 3.5. Total is 46. So can you bet the Jets? Can you stomach it? I don't know, but I also can't bet the Rams because I've been wrong on them every single freaking game this year. My number is perfectly at Rams plus 3.5. If you look at this full season stats, the Rams have done well recently, but then again, so have the Jets. They really took care of business against the Jaguars. They lost some games they shouldn't have, but stat-wise, they look a little bit better than they've shown. Both teams don't seem to have a great defense. I feel the Rams are in a little bit of a letdown spot, yet they also have extra rest, right? So figure that one out. This is kind of a perfect spread, in my opinion. Jets should be favored. Dogs by 3.5 at home. The Rams should be favored past the 3 with how bad the Jets have been. But this is the NFL. You can see the Jets figuring a way to cover this, especially when you have Rodgers playing with a lot of emotion right now and all pissed off. It's not a bad number. I could see the Rams blowing them out. I can see the Jets winning this game. Let's move on to the Giants versus the Falcons, another disgusting game. So you have the Giants and the Falcons kind of switching quarterbacks back and forth. I think Drew Lock is going to play for the Giants. And, they've just been bouncing around with quarterbacks because they had Tim Boyle playing. And it sounds like that Neighbors likes him. He's been saying nice things about Tim Boyle. But I don't know what to completely expect this game from the Giants. They showed a slight amount of life last week against the Ravens. They scored a few points. And now they're just playing another, team with a bad coach. I always said Raheem Morris is not a good coach, and he's shown it again this year, and Kirk Cousins is lost, and they're switching quarterbacks to Michael Penix. It's weird to go to a left-handed quarterback right in the middle of the year. Those are the numbers that really make the most sense to me. If I look from a pure power rating standpoint, do I have to downgrade Atlanta for this move? Maybe a little bit, it brings me to about 8.75 points. I think that I had Kirk Cousins with too high of upside before. So, I got to downgrade the injury here, and I'm right at the spread, in this situation. I'm literally right at the spread. From an algorithm standpoint, the Giants should be like 6.5 points. So I'm right in the middle-ish. It probably should be a 7.5 point spread and not an 8.5 point spread, in my opinion. Although the Giants have the worst freaking rush defense in the land. So now you wonder if Bijan Robinson is just going to run all over them. I'll pass on this game, but I'm not even sure if I like it as a teaser with a new quarterback. Maybe the Giants sneak one here. Titans versus Colts. Colts minus 3.5, total 42.5, low total. Got a favorite past the 3 in a division game. What the hell is going to show up here? You got Mason Rudolph now switching to quarterback in this game. Will Levis back in the doghouse and probably soon to be off the team. I think the coaches, very young. Brian Callahan against Shane Steichen. I think Steichen's the better coach. He just has incompetence for a team, including his quarterback. You know that the effort you're going to get from these teams are probably just for the fact they're in the same division. Are they going to both care super? No, they're both out of the playoffs. The Colts probably reeling after that boneheaded loss last week. I'm not going to lie, from a numbers standpoint, I'm probably, I don't know what to do with Mason Rudolph. I think that he's just as good as Levis or better, so I almost have to upgrade that. And then I've never been high on Anthony Richardson. I think he's green and raw, and they make stupid mistakes over there. From a power rating standpoint, I do have Indianapolis better. And so how many points of home field are you going to give them? I have Tennessee pretty dang bad. And from a power rating, I have this more of a 4.5 to 5 point win for Indy. And you're sitting at 3.5. And from a Algorithm shows it should be 2.5 using the whole season and just 2 from recency. This is just, I just want to stay away from this game. I'm tempted to take the Colts, and it's going to go to 3, and I'm going to be super tempted to take the Colts, and that's not good. Hussey's the ref. He likes the home a little bit, so that's what could get me. Let's move on to the next game. We have the Vikings at the Seahawks. Seahawks +3, total 43.3. It's looking like Geno's going to play this game. I find it interesting that the Packers were 2.5 point favorites against the Seahawks, and now the Vikings are 3. I guess they're factoring in that blowout last week. Geno's just prone to make mistakes, but when he's looking good, he's cooking. And this is a terrible spot for the Vikings. A much worse spot being the fact that they have the Packers on deck. They're coming off with a division win against the Bears, an easy win. Things kind of bounced well for them. When the Bears did something good, there was a foul, or a flag, I should say, when the Bears had opportunities to score, they didn't. They couldn't. It's not like it was that misleading, but the Bears almost put as much yards up as the Vikings. It's Seattle or nothing, but Seattle's even a much better teaser leg because this is going to be a rainy game in Seattle. I look at the weather, obviously, always. And it says 97% chance of rain, 13-mile-per-hour winds. Those could be faster or slower. It always rains in Seattle. But I think that the Seahawks, who are not a dome team, and the Vikings are a dome team, should be able to handle it a little bit better. This is probably one for the upset that could happen. You circle this one and say, this is upset potential. Yeah, it's a better teaser leg, but I don't quite have Minnesota from a power rating up to 2 points. I have at 1.75. From a teaser leg or from an algorithm perspective, I have this game Minnesota -4. So that's also factoring in Geno's dumb mistakes because it's using a lot of those stats. So, it's a situation where I'm probably just going to use the teaser leg and be very happy with it from a betting perspective. Next game, the Patriots at the Bills. Bills -14, total 46.5. I mean, there's a lot of discoordination going on the Patriots because you have a bad coach in Gerard Mayo, but it's also happening in the locker room. It's kind of weird to see. I felt like the Patriots are expected to be bad. I almost feel like this could be a rallying spot for them a little bit. And then you have the Bills, who are just in a very, very flat spot. I mean, come on. This is you come off the big Lions win. You've been winning many games in a row. Actually, I shouldn't say that. You did lose to the Rams, but you also had a great effort against them. You need to keep winning, yet do you overlook them a little bit, maybe? I don't know. You have the Jets on deck, and you're probably giving more respect to Aaron Rodgers than you are to Drake May. I don't think that this is going to be a win by any means for the Patriots, but I think if the Bills are smart, they stay healthy and get the hell out of there as quickly as possible, get up by 10 points, run the ball. I'm not sure if the Patriots can stop the run that well. Looking at rush EPA on defense, the New England Patriots 20th. That's actually not that bad. I thought it would have been worse than that. Drop back success rate, ranking 29th. So if the Bills are running the ball, maybe they don't run it quite as good. The clock melts, backdoor happens. Yeah, I can't do nothing with this game. I can't do anything right now from a side perspective, maybe from a props perspective. Here's another disgusting game. Niners versus Dolphins. Dolphins -1, total 44.5. Can you believe that neither of these teams are in playoff contention? I believe mathematically the Niners might be, but they would need something perfect to happen. This is just old coach versus his squire. Kyle Shanahan was McDaniel's guy. McDaniel was under Shanahan for years, and then he gets his full head coaching job at the Dolphins, and the Dolphins needed to show up last week, and they couldn't. They're probably going to show up against the Niners because they know what it means to their coach, McDaniel. The Niners are completely discombobulated. Brock Purdy's playing for a freaking check, playing for a contract. God, I've been so wrong on these Niners. I can't do anything here. I bet on them last week, lost. Bet against them the week before, lost. It's just I'm staying away from this Niners Dolphins. I have nothing to say good about this one. Jaguars versus the Raiders. I mean, if you think that betting on the Miami versus the 49ers is bad, this might be way worse. Aiden O'Connell, I think you're going to play. I guess if you're going to play, I'd rather bet the Raiders. But the Raiders also have issues because is Crosby done for the season? Or is they going to put him on the shelf? I would. I mean, why would you get Max Crosby hurt? Sorry. He is on IR. He was just put on IR. So he's out for the season. I guess you see what you got in Aiden O'Connell, but you also have another coach that's probably going to be on his way out again in Antonio Pierce. He had his 1 year chance to do something, and he's probably going to be toast here. Oh, man. I can't think of an uglier game than this one. And to be honest with you, I think my number is exactly at the -1. Tampa Bay versus the Dallas Cowboys. Man, Cowboys are +4. Total is 48.5. This is a spot where Tampa Bay keeps winning. Do they flatten out at some point? In our article that we always put out for NFL betting spots, I don't think I included them. Yeah, I actually did. I included them in a possible letdown spot. But also the Cowboys, they had a very easy game against the Chargers, and they have a pretty significant look-ahead spot as they might look past the Bucs to the Eagles. They don't care about this game. They're not making the playoffs. They're out of the playoffs. Might as well try to beat the Eagles. The Buccaneers have been at times with the Dallas Cowboys. They lost in the playoffs. If you remember, the Dallas went and then smoked them first round of the playoffs last year. So it's almost like a playoff revenge spot. But the 2 times before that, Tampa Bay beat them. 2022 and 2021. Obviously, there's no Dak, and they had Dak when they won in the playoffs last year. If you remember, the Buccaneers were also injured last year. Now the road chalk against the team that beat them minus Dak Prescott. The Tampa's playing really good ball. I'm not gonna lie, they're playing really good ball, but they're super injured on defense. But the injuries are mostly in the secondary. It's all secondary guys. They have guys kind of off the scrap heap really playing in the secondary for Tampa. There's I guess Antoine Winfield's questionable and Mike Edwards is questionable. But man, it's the injuries to Bryce Hall and Troy Hill at cornerback and Jordan Whitehead at safety was kind of rough. They're semi-deep, I guess. And man, did they really stick it to the Chargers last week. But I don't know. It was just more about the Chargers looking bad, especially on the defensive side. They're not going to have 2 perfect games in the same week. The thing about the Cowboys is they're also a little bit weak here on the defensive side because, if you remember, they had to put one of their best cornerbacks on IR as well. Trayvon Diggs. Actually, he's not on IR. He's out. Trayvon Diggs is out. And they do have a lot of guys on IR, on the defensive side themselves. So that's a problem. They lost Carson. They lost Butler at cornerback back in early December. And what's the status here with Trayvon Diggs? Surgery. So, yeah, he's not going to be back. Why is he not put on IR yet? He's listed as out. He's not put on IR. So I knew he was messed up, but Jesus. It's just, Tampa should be a 4-point favorite. Maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit higher. I'm looking at my power rating here, and Dallas at home, which they seem to play really bad at home. I have the Bucks minus 2.75. Not quite there. But then again, you look at Tampa Bay on the algorithm side, and they're 7.5 point favorites. I have a pretty big discrepancy between that. When Tampa's just looking good, they're looking good. But when they're looking bad, they can look pretty bad too. Like when they played the freaking Panthers. How awful was watching that game. That was not fun at all. Laying points to a Panthers team that's supposed to be the worst in the league, and them not even sniffing the win. Now they've won 4 in a row. They beat the Giants 30-7 overtime in Carolina. Then they beat the Raiders, which was an easy game at home, 28-13. Then at the Chargers. They also lost 4 in a row right before that. San Fran, Kansas City, Atlanta, even Atlanta, and then Baltimore. I guess that was a pretty hard schedule. We can excuse some of that. But Dallas is also a big name just without a quarterback. Everybody else, minus Diggs and a few other cornerbacks, are okay. It's a perfect spread. What can I say? I'm passing on this game as well. Not a lot this week, and that's why I'm laying points here, which is very strange to me because I'm usually a dog better. You talk Monday night, the Saints and the Packers. What are you supposed to do with that? 14 points for the Packers and a look-ahead spot to the Vikings. Spencer Rattler's bad, but how bad can he be? I could see the Saints being down by 10 points, 7 points. Spencer Rattler throws a pick six, trying to win the game. They're terrible against the run. The Packers are a great running team. Great coach at the Packers, massive coach mismatch. You got the Saints going up to a cold Lambeau Field. Jordan Love plays great in the cold so far. Man, it is bleak this week, but that's what we have. And now it's time for our Refuse to Lose teaser. That is an amazing 11-4 for the season. All of my teasers this year, 17-5-1, if you include the premium. But we're, like I said, teasing the Cincinnati Bengals to minus 1.5 with Seattle to +9. I think that's a great teaser. And, I almost like Seattle side here. Might come back to it. But I think this is the best that you have this week because I just do not trust the Falcons at minus 8.5. I don't. There's a lot of -1s here with the Niners and the Jags. Kind of looks like teaser protection a little bit, but I think those are true numbers. The Texans, do you want to tease them? Maybe you do. It just depends upon Mahomes' health. But I think these are the two best teaser legs in the week this week. So we're going to do that for our normal 2.5 stars. Woo! Now it is time for
The Sharp Side of the Force.
The Sharp Side of the Force is brought to you by this season. For the largest sports contest in all the land, please visit www.theszn.com/OB for a discount. Terms, conditions, location apply. And we also, on our website, have another college football survivor. So please feel free to check that out if you'd like to get into that. It's more of a test market for us, but a little playoff survivor could be fun. All right, Sharp College Football as of December 20th to the 25th. Sharp money on Texas minus 10.5 to minus 12, hosting Clemson, 38% of the tickets and 58% of the money. Sharp money on UTSA minus 7 to minus 10.5, hosting Coastal Carolina, 59% of the tickets and 74% of the money. That's about it till the 25th. Sharp totals, Ohio versus Jacksonville State, over 52 to 56.5, 44% of the tickets and 70% of the money. SMU versus Penn State, over 52.5 to 54.5, 50% of the tickets and 90% of the money. Clemson versus Texas, under 53.5 to 51.5, 46% of the tickets, 54% of the money. A little disagreement there, I guess. Close Carolina versus UTSA, under 57.5 to 55.5, 72% of the tickets and 83% of the money. Sharp NFL. Chiefs +2 to -3, hosting Texas. Texans, I should say. 57% of the money and or 57% of the tickets and 62% of the money. Had to make a quick adjustment there. Bengals -6.5 to -7.5 hosting the Browns. 67% of the tickets, 76% of the money. Dolphins +2.5 to -1 hosting the 49ers. 31% of the tickets, 66% of the money. Packers -13 to -14 hosting the Saints. 80% of tickets and 93% of the money. Some dual action there. Sharp totals, Titans versus Colts under 45.5 to 42.5. 20% of the tickets, 37% of the money. Giants versus Falcons under 44.5 to 42.5. 14% of the tickets and 45% of the money. Jaguars versus Raiders under 45.5 to 40. 15% of the tickets and 52% of the money. And the Bears versus Lions over 46.5 to 48. 40% of the tickets and 85% of the money. All right, my friends, a little recap here. I'm taking Tulane plus the 14. And Texas under 51.5 for the weekend in college football playoffs. NFL, we're doing the Chiefs -3, Ravens -6, Lions -6.5. A lot of favorites there. And then Cincinnati down to the teaser 1.5 with Seattle all the way up to +9. And that's what we have for this week. We're going to have a lot more for our Christmas show next week. Paul Stone likes Notre Dame -7.5. I actually have a disagreement on that, though. Paul also likes the under Texas 51.5, just like me. He also likes Clemson +11 in that situation. We also like the beer bet bangers. He did some long shots. Grand Canyon 200 to 1 and McNeese State 500 to 1 to win the NCAA tournament. And then start hedging back with those, obviously, when the tournament starts. And I like the game to have the most scoring points. Notre Dame versus Indiana is it. So it's Indiana, Notre Dame. We'll have the highest score at +260 for my beer bet bangers. My friends, thank you so much for listening to this podcast. If you have any questions for us, feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. Have a great rest of your week and go get some winners.